With the countdown to a new school year, officials and parents have to make some hard decisions. For some families, a return to classroom learning is urgently needed, but questions still remain about the safety of school buildings and the quality of options in remote learning. Among the groups struggling with those questions is the Boston Education Justice Alliance. To tell us about the search for answers is its director, Ruby Reyes. Thank you very much for being with us, Ruby.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been talking about reopening since March as an organization, and our parents have been equally concerned and just thinking about different options and just really wanting information and really trying to be a part of these conversations around these different models. And so we've been having town halls with our membership since April. To talk about these different issues, to talk about what supports they need, and so it's been a really, I think, stressful past 6 months.
Well, one of the things I think that seems to be a position for your organization right now is to at least start the year with just remote learning. Why that position?
Well, our official position is that we are in support of majority remote only, with students that really need in-person services, such as special education students, English language learners, and young people that haven't done well with online learning in K-3. So those students really need in-person services, but that those in-person services happen in safe spaces. And currently, the school system has 125 school buildings, and of those 125, only 35 have HVAC systems. And so we know that it's not a safe space if there isn't an HVAC system. The district's official policy is that one window will be open in each classroom, and that would be considered a safe space. For us, if you open one window, it doesn't really create air circulation. And so you actually need two windows open to create air circulation. And so those just aren't really safe spaces. And so the way that we think about it is, if there's unsafe workspaces, unsafe working conditions, and there's unsafe living conditions, these are unsafe learning conditions.
We keep hearing that the decisions are going to be guided by data. And one number I keep hearing is that right now in Boston, we have a citywide positive test rate of 2.6%. That's even lower than the figure in New York City, where the experts say it's low enough to reopen the schools. So if you've got this 2.6% citywide figure in Boston, what do you say about that?
Well, I mean, a lot of our students, they live all over the city, and there's certain parts of the city that have higher rates of COVID. And so I think for us, we've been asking for an equity analysis well before they were even talking about a hybrid model, to be able to really concentrate on neighborhoods that we're seeing these spikes of COVID cases, and really being able to think about their needs, the residents and the young people of these neighborhoods, and how to get them to and from school if they need those in-person services. And then also really how to, remake remote learning so that it is engaging and it is well supported by the district.
By the way, I looked at the figures from the Public Health Commission, and it says that the rate is at least, I think, 3.5% in neighborhoods where most of the Boston public school students live. Plus East Boston, I think, about 7.9%.
Yeah, that's almost at 8%. And so even, because of the way that the Boston public schools are structured, you have young people that may not live in East Boston and are going to schools in East Boston, or vice versa, East Boston residents who are sending their young people out of East Boston to these different schools. So there's no middle school currently in East Boston. And a lot of those children have to go outside of East Boston. So even just thinking about, when you talk about the rates and, where young people are traveling to and from to get to school, really thinking about where there are safe spaces in those neighborhoods to be able to provide in-person services.
Well, colleges, they have a pretty rigorous plan for testing, at least in most cases. And a lot of those students are coming from states where infection rates are much higher than they are here right now. But what about the Boston Public Schools? Do we need some kind of regular testing for students, you think?
I think so. I think that's one of the things that that they have not created mandatory testing policies around. That they'll do thermostat testing for temperature. But the reality is that if there's the only way to actually um, address this issue in a very concentrated, effective way is to do more testing, is to find out who's infected and who's not, and then be able to treat those folks. And so the fact that BPS doesn't want to do mandatory testing, it's just really it's further exacerbating the problem, because you have folks that the symptoms may not show up for 2 or 3 days, the symptoms may not show up for weeks, right? And so you have people going back and forth across these different neighborhoods, across these different schools, and also the staff. Like, you have teachers that live in Worcester that come in, and vice versa. You have teachers that are taking public transportation, maybe a bus and a train to get to work. And so all of that is risking further exposure. And so if anything we've learned from our doctors that we've spoken to is that the only way to really begin thinking about this virus and controlling it is through more and more testing.
Well, in the school department, they're also looking at the better ways to do remote learning. What would you like to see that might not be in that plan so far?
Well, in March, they should have hired a digital learning specialist. Digital learning is a whole, different type of curriculum, different type of methodology, different type of pedagogy. They should have at this point hired a digital learning specialist. And from what we've heard, they're in the process of hiring a digital learning team and they're in process now, but this should have been done, in April, to really be able to provide teachers with quality, quality PD, quality professional development around digital learning. And that just hasn't happened. And so, for us, we're saying, like, can you just hire at least one person to do digital learning at this point? And teachers were really just, given a laptop and said, figure it out. And my heart really goes out, because it's just, I think there's so much tension, and so, because it is such a stressful time, that we're forgetting about the fact that digital learning it's a whole other different type of learning, and different type of tool usage, different type of way of setting up classrooms, different skill sets, and the fact that the district is still pushing for this, teachers to teach both online and in person at the same time, means that they're also just not really understanding this huge difference in the type of learning and the different methodologies. That's it's just it's completely different. And so the fact that that's still being discussed and still an option is just setting not only up our teachers up for failure, but also our students. You're not going to be able to be doing remote learning as a student, watching a video of your teacher explaining a math lesson is, a pre-recorded, as Dr. Caselius explained at one of the school committee meetings, is that she would pre-record a math lesson on the weekend and then, share that while she's teaching in person. And so that's just, it's not a good way to learn for young people. It's unfair for the young people that are going to be doing remote learning, as well as the young people that are going to be doing in-person learning.
I want to ask you about the school facilities again, because one of the things that we're hearing from the mayor and the superintendent is there has been a lot of work done on the buildings, at least to make them cleaner, and there's money put out for equipment, plexiglass to separate the students, and they're saying, come inside, get a look at it, give it a chance, essentially. What do you say to that kind of appeal?
I mean, we've been asking for them to do, I asked for them to think about doing tours, think about doing, just explaining. The last school committee meeting, not the one last night, but the one before, one of the school committee members, Michael O'Neill, asked Tammy Poost, who's responsible for kind of the oversight and coordination of this process. She said that there was model classrooms set up, and he asked how many, and she couldn't answer that question. And so I think, there's such distrust with BPS leadership and BPS administrators in central office because of things like that. Yeah, like definitely would love to do a tour, a virtual tour, right? Those should already be available. But the fact of the matter is that they're still waiting for equipment that's been ordered. And again, for our organization, we have been pushing for these things to have been done in advance. These things could have been ordered, not in August when everyone else is ordering them, but they could have been ordered in May or June when you knew that this was going to happen. And then there's still the matter of them setting all this plexiglass up and whatnot. They've, many of the things that they shared, excuse me, last night on the school committee was that they have these things that they've ordered, and then when we're supposed to receive them. But that also doesn't include when they'll be installed. And for many of our families, one mom talked about it taking her 2 years to get a radiator fixed in her child's classroom after really advocating and pushing for that radiator to be fixed, and it took 2 years. So that mom isn't going to exactly have faith that these things are going to get done in such a short amount of time. So if things have been ordered to arrive on September 1st, and schools are supposed to reopen on the 21st, what is the likelihood of them being all implemented and installed by the 21st deadline?
Well, I'm sure there'll be more information coming out from various quarters for people to keep up with. So if they want to follow Boston Education Justice Alliance, you got something online they can go to?
Yes, you can join our website, bostonedjustice.org. You can follow us at bostonedjustice.org. We're having another town hall on the 31st and on September 3rd, just kind of bringing parents together to talk about what has worked for them, what services that they've received that they can share with one another, and really just developing these networks of parents to support one another in these really difficult times.
Thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon.
Ruby Reyes from the Boston Education Justice Alliance. We'll have more news in just a moment.